I would now like to introduce our presenters, Brett and Shawn. So I'll just tell you a little bit about them. So Shawn Cook, he's originally from northern New Brunswick. Shawn has spent his career primarily in the areas of management and staff training and development. In 2009, Shawn joined the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as an investigator and spent most of his policing career providing frontline service to many rural locations in Saskatchewan until 2016, when he was promoted to the RCMP Training Academy in Regina as an instructional facilitator. Shawn now serves the people of Saskatchewan as Director of Enforcement for the Consumer Protection Division of the Financial and Consumer Affairs Authority of Saskatchewan. So welcome to Shawn. And Brett Wawro, born and raised in Regina, and then educated at the University of Regina with a business administration degree. Brett has spent the last 20 years working for the Financial and Consumer Affairs Authority of Saskatchewan in various roles. Prior to being promoted to Director of Enforcement in 2023, he was an investigator for the Enforcement Branch, the Securities Division, for over 15 years. This role involved investigating breaches of the Securities Act, which includes various forms of investment fraud. So welcome to both of you, and I'll let you go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks everyone for coming here this evening for our presentation. It is Be Scam Smart. So I'll have Shawn with me here today as well presenting, so you'll be hearing from the two of us here. We'll be covering a variety of common scams and frauds to be aware of and how you can protect yourself. We hope by the end of this presentation, you'll have the knowledge you'll need to spot and stop common scams that you may encounter. Today, we'll cover the changing nature of frauds and scams, professions to be aware of, how to spot and stop common scams. Fraud can happen to anyone. Key takeaways, what to do if you're scammed, and there'll be time to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So who is the FCAA? The FCAA is the Financial Consumer Affairs Authority of Saskatchewan. It's a financial regulatory body. We oversee the licensing and registration, audit and compliance, market conduct, and complaint handling and enforcement for a number of different industries, including consumer protection and securities. Educating the public on how to protect themselves and their money is a key part of what we do. The changing landscape of fraud and scams. Advances in technology and the internet have given fraudsters a new set of tools to target you. The anonymous, fast nature of the internet allows fraudsters to reach victims worldwide and leave little evidence of their activities and who they are. Insulated by anonymity, distance, and speed. Light shut off here for a second on us. They're able to reach victims worldwide while hiding their whereabouts. These people can be virtually anywhere in the world and contacting people in Saskatchewan to try and scam them now, which is really scary. They're able to receive and transfer funds and disappear without a single trace of who they were or where they're coming from. They can create instant companies on the website, instant websites, to make those companies look legitimate and then vanish before you even know who they are or where they're from. Unwittingly, victims can feel like they're dealing with a local business, and they may in fact be located on another continent for all we know. The advances in technology have really allowed stuff like that to happen, so you have to be a little wary. And one of the most common things for the changing landscape is just because it's on the internet doesn't make it real. And that's a very key thing to remember.
Okay, so I'm going to discuss a few bad apples that you may encounter. So there are a number of professions that need to follow certain guidelines when they're operating within the province of Saskatchewan. And this includes the ones that I have listed here. So you have your direct sellers, your collection agents, and vehicle dealers. We've all heard the old jokes about, oh, sleazy car salesmen. Well, they come by that honestly, and there's quite a number of laws and regulations that they actually have to abide by in order to operate. So we're going to cover some of the tips and tricks so that you're prepared if you have an interaction with someone from these professions. Now, as we go through these tips and tricks, it's important to remember that not all of these people in these industries are fraudsters, but it is important to be aware of how scammers can use the disguise of one of these professions to appear legitimate, very much like Brett expressed about the websites. Some in-person interactions that you have can look just as legitimate, even though it might be a scam. So we'll start with the first one here, which is direct sellers. So a direct seller is a person who goes from house to house selling goods or services. So it's basically your door-to-door salesman. Now, if any of you remember from your childhood, I know we used to have people that would come to the door selling things like kitchen knife sets and encyclopedia sets. But nowadays, direct sales has kind of changed this dynamic to more personalized items. You'll get people that are direct selling for furnaces, water softener systems, even alarm systems for your home. So a few important tips on what to be aware of when interacting with a direct seller is that direct sellers actually need to be licensed through our office to operate. And they should be able to give you proof of that. So if you have someone that knocks on your door and says, hey, good evening, I'm selling home alarm systems, would like to know if you'd be interested in signing up for a package, the first thing you should be doing is asking, may I please see your direct salesperson's license? Now, an unfortunate reality with that one is that not all legitimate companies are actually compliant with the law, and some of their salespeople may not even know what you're talking about. So that would be a red flag to keep an eye out for. But if they have one, they should be providing it to you. If they can't or they won't, then you should reconsider doing business with them. The next important tip is to take your time. Don't be rushed to sign anything, and be certain that you've read everything so that you know what you're agreeing to. The majority of the complaints that my division gets regarding door-to-door salespeople is that they will have signed a contract or an agreement and then come to find out there are terms and conditions in it that they're not okay with, but they didn't take the time to read the agreement first. So I know we live in a world now, especially in the online environment, where everything has a terms of service. You can't even sign on to your Netflix without agreeing to their terms of service. And if you're anything like me, I know when I bought my last iPhone, I didn't read the terms of service. I just clicked agree. And most people are inclined to do the same. The problem with that is you never quite know what it is you're agreeing to until it becomes too late. You realize you're bound by a condition you wouldn't have agreed to if you'd reviewed it. So take your time and make sure you read everything. When it's a door-to-door seller, it's always a little bit harder to say no to someone right to their face. It's typically much easier to do that online or over the phone. So it's important to remember not to fall for pushy or aggressive sales tactics. Try to remember that it's your home and your decision, and it's up to you as to whether you do business with them. And if you choose not to, that's your choice, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. Another important point is that direct sellers shouldn't require cash only. Typically, direct sellers won't want to collect large amounts of cash throughout their sales anyways, because the issue with that is as they're canvassing from door to door, carrying large amounts of cash can actually be dangerous for them. So if you get a door-to-door salesman who's requiring only cash, that's an important red flag. Another big thing too, and again, this comes down to feeling the pressure of saying yes to someone who's at your door in the moment. Feel free to take the time to research that supplier before you agree to do business with them. Maybe talk to some friends or family. Make sure you understand the contract that you're agreeing to and what it might cost you during the term of your investment. But don't feel pressured to buy right away. It's very much easier to walk away and consider your options than to just blindly agree to it and try to cancel later on. Now, that being said, there are provisions of the Direct Sellers Act that does allow you to cancel your transaction anytime up to 10 days after you receive a copy of your contract. And you don't even have to tell them why. That's written right in the legislation. But even so, and as I mentioned, it's a lot easier to contemplate all the terms and conditions and to think about it first, than to agree and try to cancel later. Next, we'll look at collection agents. So these are the fun individuals that call you on the phone in an attempt to collect debts. Now, 99% of the time, a collection agent is undertaking to collect a debt for others, but there are instances where a collection agent will have purchased your debt and is collecting it because you now owe it to them. So I like to compare collection agents to proctologists or dentists. You don't want to have to deal with them, but they are an unfortunate and necessary part of society and the economy. But very much like direct sellers, collection agents do have certain guidelines that they need to operate in Saskatchewan and when contacting you. And those include the fact that collection agents, much like door-to-door salesmen, need to be licensed to operate within the province. And once again, they should be able to provide proof of this. Collection agents shouldn't be contacting you so often that it constitutes harassment. So for example, if you have a collection agent who's calling you every 5 minutes, tying up your phone line, or even tying up your phone line at work, that would constitute not only potentially criminal harassment, but it would constitute an unlawful practice under the Collection Agents Act. So when they do call you or send you correspondence, they need to be identifying themselves. That can include their license number. Any licensee's number is public information, and you can look up these collection agents on our website. So having that collection agent's number is an easy way for the collection agent to prove their legitimacy and actually prove who they are to you. So a collection agent who's reluctant or refuses to provide you their license number can be a significant red flag if you're receiving a phone call from one of these individuals. In addition to identifying themselves, they also need to indicate who the debt is owed to, as well as what the balance of that debt is. So they can't just call you and say, hey, you owe money, you need to pay it, give us a credit card number. They need to tell you what the balance is and to whom the debt was incurred with. And that being said, you should never provide your credit card information over the phone to someone who has called you, regardless of whether they've identified themselves as a collection agent or not. A safe, common practice is to say, thank you, I'm going to look you up and I will call you back, and then hang up, look up the collection agent in question and actually contact them at their publicly listed number to confirm you're actually getting the right agency. And they do have certain limitations as to when they can contact you. So for example, collection agents can't contact you on Sundays or on holidays, and certainly they can't call you between the hours of 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. So they can't be calling you throughout the night to try and get you to collect on your debt. And last but not least, we get to our vehicle dealers. So a vehicle dealer or a dealer is effectively exactly what it sounds like. It's a business that sells cars to the general public. So like the other two examples, vehicle dealers do need to be licensed to carry on business in the province of Saskatchewan. When you're considering the purchase of a vehicle, whether it's online or at the dealership, you need to be mindful of hidden fees. So when you're buying a car, there are fees that may be associated to it. There can be fees like a documentation fee, which is very common and you're likely to pay and is actually legislatively permitted by the vehicle dealership. But you'll sometimes see things like they'll try to sneak on an added warranty package you may not have asked for, or they'll have something like an enhancement package or a service package. And it's important to question those fees, ask them why they're there. And they should never be telling you that a fee is mandatory. If they've got a warranty package on there and they say, no, this is standard, it's part of every purchase and it has to be there, they're committing an unlawful practice and you shouldn't purchase the vehicle. Much like door-to-door salesmen, you shouldn't feel pressured to purchase any extra coverage packages or any costly additions. And you want to make sure that you're reviewing all your documentation before you sign it, because when purchasing a vehicle, there's always multiple signatures that include disclosure documents, your bill of sale contract, and your financing documents. And sometimes in the elation to actually get your hands on the keys and get your new vehicle, we sometimes neglect to actually read through all these documents before we sign them. Much like a door-to-door sale, don't be afraid to put some thought into your purchase and return at a later time. If those salespeople genuinely want to get the sale, they're going to accommodate you in any way they can. So they shouldn't be pressuring you to buy right then and there. If you tell them I'm going to go home and think about it and come back later, they should be more than happy to give you a business card and say, when you're ready to buy, you come back and see me. And last but not least, with the purchase of any vehicle, dealers do have to provide you with all the material information about that vehicle that's known to them that would potentially influence your decision to buy the vehicle. This includes a copy of a VIN search through SGI for that vehicle and contains any material information like if there have been any repairs, if the vehicle has been involved in any collisions, if it's been purchased from outside of country or even outside the province, or if the vehicle was previously used for something such as an emergency vehicle, an ambulance, a limo service, or something similar to that effect.
Okay, now we're going to move on and do something where we are going to explain a few different scenarios and then point out the red flags from these scenarios. We'll discuss how to protect yourself after identifying these warning signs. And the most important part for this is the first step to preventing or stopping any scam is being able to spot it in the first place. Lana gets a call from an excited telemarketer who is offering her an opportunity to book a vacation at an extremely low rate. The telemarketer says this is an opportunity offered only to only some of the most valued frequent flyers for a limited time only. All Lana needs to do to claim this offer is provide her credit card and birthday over the phone. What are the red flags? So when you think here and you look at this scenario, there's a few kind of red flags that we see that pop out here. Often these opportunities are framed with a limited time offer. They do that to try and kind of persuade you and pressure you in those situations. Don't feel like you need to be pressured. You always have time. Sometimes the callers will ask you to keep the offer secret. That's a huge red flag. There's no reason to ever keep anything like that secret. They may bombard you with details, and those details, the amount of them they're giving you, is usually meant to confuse you. It's all part of the pressure tactics. One popular scam involves a caller offering to apply for a low-rate interest credit card on a senior's behalf for a fee. Another con involves someone pretending to be from your work or your bank, claiming that your credit is at risk, and asking you to provide your bank card or your number, your password over the phone. These are all things that you shouldn't be looking at here. Telemarketing scams. One of the most important things to realize is that saying no isn't rude. It's empowering. So when you're getting these phone calls, if you're not wanting to talk to these people, just tell them no. And we've got the website listed here if you actually want to get added onto the do not call list. It's a list here in Canada that you can get it added onto, and then these telemarketing companies supposedly aren't supposed to be able to call those numbers. Also with these, this is something that comes in lots of our different scam warnings. If it's too good to be true, it probably isn't. That's one of our most important things that we'll always kind of throw out there.
Okay, now the next one we'll look at here is the relative in trouble. Now this one's a little bit near and dear to me because my mother was actually subjected to this scam, and luckily she didn't fall for it. But typically the scam involves kind of what the scenario lays out here. So Joe answers the phone and a female voice will go, "Grandpa," and Joe will respond, "Laura," and she'll respond, "Yes, Grandpa, it's Laura. I'm in the hospital and I need you to wire me $10,000 to me right away. Don't tell my parents, they'll be so mad." Joe isn't sure what he wants to do, but he wants to help his grandchild. What are the red flags? Now, usually these scammers will always target a parent or a grandparent, and obviously they want to do whatever they can to help their child or their grandchild. And that's why those folks are targeted. So they'll get you to guess their name first. So that's why when you say hello and they hear a female voice, they'll go mom or grandma, which is what happened to my mother. And then you'll fill in the blank and go, Shawn? Well, now they have my name. So now they can use that. And it can be just that simple. So they get you to fill in the blank and then they pretend to be that person. They'll typically always say that they're in some kind of legal or financial trouble. They may even say that they're in some kind of medical bind where money might be required. They'll usually ask you to send money through a means that might not seem normal, like wiring through Western Union. Sometimes there will be another person involved who will either pose as a cop or a lawyer or someone of authority to confirm the story. So they might get a doctor that will come on the line and say, yes, your grandchild needs this urgent surgery and they need the 10,000. We can't proceed until the money comes through. And then they'll give clear directions on how to get and to wire the money. And they'll very often tell you not to tell anyone about it, especially other relatives. So those are all important red flags. So in my mother's scenario, they did just that. The scenario they gave her was that I was in Edmonton visiting some friends. I had gotten into a bar fight of all things, and I had gotten my nose broken, which explained why my voice was different. And then they convinced my mother that I had gotten arrested and I was being held and would only be released on bail, but I had lost my wallet at the bar where I got into the fight and needed her to send me $5,000 through Western Union. Now, my mother was obviously very desperate to help me, and she took down all the information. She hung up, she threw on her coat, and she was just about to step out the door when she suddenly thought better of it and thought, I'd better call his cell phone, which it was a good thing that she did because then she reached me on my cell and I confirmed that I was okay. And when she told me what had happened, I made it clear to her that it was a scam and that she shouldn't forward any money. I also confirmed with her, I'll never ask you for that amount of money or ask for it through that means. And then I jokingly pointed out to her that if I were really in jail, I wouldn't have access to Western Union. So how would I access that money if she sent it to me? But it's always in hindsight. So some important tips to remember to protect yourself is make sure you don't give out any personal information to the caller. Instead of filling in the blank and giving a name, ask them, who is this? Make them provide the name. If it genuinely is a child or a grandchild, don't be quick to say, well, it's Shawn. Ask the caller personal questions that only the real relative would know. And verify their story by contacting the relative or calling your relative's friends or parents. Most of the time, if they say, please don't tell so-and-so, the first thing you should be doing is checking with that person.
Mail scams. Maggie gets a letter in the mail telling her that she has won a car in a contest, but she can't claim her prize unless she sends $1,000 to the address on the letter to cover taxes and such. Maggie could really use a new car. Surely sending a letter to the address or asking for more details couldn't hurt, right? What are the red flags? Well, this one's got a few red flags. I guess the biggest one is, can you ever win a contest you've never entered? That's usually the biggest one, is a lot of those ones where they get in a hold of you. There's stuff that a person's never ever entered. So you just got to kind of take a step back and just think for a second on that. They may include such things as a fake check or things like that. Again, they're doing just little things like that just to entice a person to make it look legitimate. And they're also doing it for a smaller sum of money. It's only $1,000, but in their hopes is that they're going to get enough people that 1,000 from you and 1,000 from the next person and 1,000 from the next person all kind of adds up. So those are some definite red flags on the mail. Another one would be if they're actually telling you that you owe money to cover taxes or fees, or if they're trying to say it's out of country, if you need to pay anything to bring it into the country or to cover revenue Canada or anything like that, those would definitely all be red flags on a mail scam here as well. So yeah, I guess the most important thing here is don't pay to win. If you need to pay any money into anything like this to get anything back as far as the winnings, that's a big red flag. Nothing's going to come from it in the end. The other big warning here is never send money to anyone you don't know or don't trust. Just because somebody's on the internet or anything like that, or say it's tied to any of these winnings or anything, if you don't know exactly who these people are and you have no way of verifying, ask for help, ask other people. Don't take that responsibility on yourself. It's always good to ask a second or third person for that information.
Okay, so next we're going to look at romance and dating. So far gone are the days where you would meet someone by staring across a crowded room at the coffee shop or at a social event or through your local community clubs. The online environment has become pretty predominant, and that includes meeting your next loved one. So the scenario here is that Jennifer's husband has passed away 3 years ago, and she's ready to try dating again. After she opens an account on a popular dating website, she begins talking with a handsome man named Dylan, who romances her with flowers and soon confesses his love for her. After a few weeks of a whirlwind online courtship, Dylan calls Jennifer, claiming she needs to send him $10,000 for an emergency expense. So some pretty obvious red flags here. So the first one is that you met in an online community. The problem with meeting someone online is you can never genuinely be sure that the person you're seeing in the photos is real to who you're actually speaking with. But typically the scammer will quickly claim to have intense romantic feelings for you and talk about big future plans, despite having not met in person and having only known you for a very short period of time. Then the scammer will quickly have some kind of a crisis and need money shortly after establishing their relationship with you. And most importantly, any relationship where no one that you know has actually met this person is a huge red flag. And much like some of the scenarios Brett talked about, they may ask you to keep that relationship a secret and also ask for the money in secret. So some important tips here to protect yourself. Much like anything else, it's important to never give out financial information, either in an email or on an online chat or any social media platform. Be careful about what kind of personal information you share through social media platforms, especially if it's anything just beyond your name. I know a lot of people, especially on Facebook, they tend to input their date of birth. There's a significant amount of damage you can actually do with a person's full name and date of birth. Be suspicious when someone you met recently asks for money. I don't know about you, but if I met someone last week, I'm not going to be asking them this week to help me pay for a major repair to my car, or help me pay for an emergency surgery, or ask for any amount of money, especially if they pressure you for it. So if they're pressuring you for that money, pressure is often a sign of fraud or abuse. And if something of this sort occurs, it's important to reach out to people you know well and trust to get their input on the scenario and what their thoughts are. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the romance, we don't necessarily see what's happening in front of us. So that independent third set of eyes can be important to see what's happening between two individuals.
Okay, the next one here is a friend of a friend scam, or more commonly known as affinity fraud. So usually in our world on the investment side, churches is usually a very common place where affinity fraud happens. So I'll give an example here. Jack and Jane are very active in their local church. One day, a church friend brings his cousin Bob to a church lunch. Bob informs the couple that he is trying to set up a new business venture and asks if Jack and Jane would use their position as a respected member of the church to help recruit new investors from the church group. Bob claims the couple would be rewarded handsomely, and he wants to offer the investment opportunity to people that share his values. What are the red flags? Well, the common red flags here that we're seeing are that the person that is approaching you is a part of your common faith or community group, but you may not know them well, yet they're trying to convince you to buy investments or real estate or something like that. They'll want to help you sell products, which will later turn out to be counterfeit, is another kind of version. They'll often want you to help recruit other people from within that same church or community group, especially if you're a trusted leader or elder in that group. They're going to try and play on that. Okay. And some tips for the friend of a friend or affinity fraud: be wary of exclusive offers. Anything that is exclusive or time limited, especially on the investment side, is a big red flag. You should always be able to take a step back and take your time on any decisions like that. Don't be pressured into any sort of commitment. Do your homework. Take your time. This is your money that you're spending. Take your time with it. There's no rush. That's a very important point. Consult with your lawyer, a bank, an accountant, a financial advisor, or even family before investing, if you have any second guesses on whether you should or not. Okay.
All right, next we have internet scams. So no surprise there, right? So you can do pretty much anything online nowadays. You can do things that 10, 15 years ago I wouldn't imagine possible to do online, like order your groceries and buy furniture and have it shipped directly to your home. So it stands to reason that scams and frauds will be very prominent on the internet. So the example we give here is Harold is a movie buff. One day he gets an email from a company with the subject line, "Download movies for free." Harold clicks on the link in the email and is taken to a website. A flashing pop-up ad tells him, "Click here to download free movies." Harold wants to download a movie to watch with his granddaughter and clicks on the button. So what are the red flags? Well, some fraudsters can send a link to a scam pop-up ad through an email or through pop-up ads on the sites you already visit. These pop-up ads can promise free products or great deals. But a red flag here is that if an email or any wording has spelling errors or looks off, it may be a scam email. So if you look at the first bullet on this slide, download movies for free, there's a few syntax and grammatical errors there that kind of stand out. Be wary of unsolicited offers in your email inbox. Scammers will randomly target email addresses hoping for a response. Clicking on the pop-up ad can allow a scammer to install a virus on your device that will allow them to access your personal information. And in many ways, this already happens organically. With the advent of AI, there's a lot of different things that happen. One good example I can tell you is at one point last week, I suggested to my wife that we order pizza for us and the kids. And then when I opened up my Facebook and started scrolling through my news feed, there was an advertisement for Pizza Hut. So sometimes your phone's AI will pick up on your words and target their advertising based on that. So scammers can take advantage of things like that. So what can you do to protect yourself from internet scams? Well, when you see some of these red flags, delete the emails. Don't open them, reply to them, and it's especially important not to click on any links or open any unknown attachments. If it's a pop-up ad, close the pop-up ad without clicking on it. Make sure that you beef up your email spam protection. And there are firewalls, antivirus programs, things of that sort that you can get to ensure that you're protecting your computer, your phone, and your devices to prevent internet scams. But if you do decide to make an online purchase, make sure it's via a secure website. Secure websites will always begin with that HTTPS, not an HTTP. And by making sure that it's reputable websites, like for example, if you are directly going to Walmart's website or Sobeys or Loblaw's website for groceries, at least you have the advantage of knowing that you took that first step and you've gone to that reputable website, as opposed to accepting something that has come from an outside source.
Okay, on to the next one here. This is cryptocurrency. I don't know how versed some of you may or may not be in cryptocurrency. We won't dive into really what cryptocurrencies are, but we'll just talk about maybe some of the scams that can be involved in cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a virtual currency. It's not regulated or protected like a regular bank or fiat money, which is what we would call our Canadian money. Prices can rise and fall dramatically, and they're often driven by media hype, which makes cryptocurrencies very volatile. A perfect example of this is cryptocurrencies have shot up at 8 or 9% today alone, just because Trump won the election yesterday. So they're very volatile. The most important thing is if a person is thinking about getting involved in investing in cryptocurrency, is I strongly stress just to make sure whoever you're dealing with is registered. There are all sorts of places to deal with in cryptocurrency on the internet, but there's only a small select group that are able to deal with Canadian citizens. That can always be checked at a link that I'll have coming on a following slide here, but this link is aretheyregistered.ca. It's a site that can be gone and looked at for any type of investment, and you can always just make sure that the person or the company you're dealing with is registered. If they're not registered, you don't always have a whole lot of recourse if anything goes wrong. Okay, the key takeaways for investing. Big ones would be if you're asked to keep an investment secret, that's a big red flag right there. There's no reason that any legitimate investment needs to be kept secret. If it's promising higher than normal returns, and yet they're downplaying the risk to the investor, that's a big red flag. That's virtually impossible. If the higher returns are always going to have higher risk, there's no way to offset that. The opportunity is an offshore investment or is a unique or new or exciting product. There's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you're doing a lot more background checking and looking, because if it is new or exciting or offshore, there is more risk involved. If the salesperson or company is not registered, that's probably our biggest red flag we have out there. If they're not registered, that's our biggest thing right there, to not deal with those people, because you have no recourse. There's a registration regime in place so that the people that are selling and the companies that are selling these investments have to adhere to a lot of rules and regulations. So it's very important to make sure that anytime you're going to make any investment with a person or company, check the website, aretheyregistered.ca. Just make sure they're on the up and up.
And this one is me, Brett?
Yep.
Okay. So some key takeaways. So warning signs for your loved ones and your caregivers. So you want your loved ones and your caregivers to watch out for things that include a new friend, a relative, or a caregiver starts conducting financial transactions without any prior documentation, or through a sudden power of attorney that may not have existed before that. Or if your relative or your loved one starts expressing excitement over a financial windfall or a prize check, if there's the sudden appearance of an uninvolved family member claiming rights to some of their possession, you might see some noticeable changes in banking habits, such as an increase in NSF activity or inconsistent transactions that didn't exist before. If they perform financial decisions that are outside the norm, like withdrawing large sums of money, or if you start noticing that there are suspicious signatures on checks that might not quite match your loved one. Or there might be some behavioral changes such as depression or fear, especially if the person has gotten into a scenario where they start to notice that they might have been backed into a corner, and some people will feel embarrassed or ashamed and won't want to talk about it, but they'll still feel that emotional toll. So to wrap up some of the examples and some of the red flags we talked about, keep these key tips in mind in order to spot any scams. The first is that you should never have to pay to claim a prize or winnings. If you've won something, you've won something. It doesn't make sense to give money to receive money. Don't send money to someone you don't know or have only met online. Legitimate organizations or individuals will never ask you for a gift card as a payment under any circumstance. And a good example I can give you of that is I had a consumer who received a phone call early in the morning after an all-night shift where they identified themselves as his bank and told him that there was fraudulent activity on his account and they needed his help to try and catch the fraudsters. But in order for them to do so, he needed the person to go to his local pharmacy and buy a $500 iTunes card and provide them with the number so that they could entice the fraudster with the funds. So right there, that's a huge red flag. If you're trying to entice a fraudster who's already performing fraudulent activity on your account, why would you be taking money out of the account to put it on an individual gift card? So it's important to remember that organizations, banking institutions will never ask for gift cards as payment. Before you consider any investment opportunity or buying any product or service that you're not sure of, whether it's in person, online, or at a retail location, talk to someone you trust, whether it's a loved one, your lawyer, an accountant, or even just a friend. Because scammers will often say the opportunity is only available for a limited time, and that's typically a red flag to entice you into making a hasty decision. It is a classic saying for a reason. If it's too good to be true, then it probably is.
Okay, next here I have some examples on some investment fraud. And what I have done for the couple examples is I've picked a few that were kind of more relevant. But one thing I'll be very frank with investment fraud is anybody can be affected by investment fraud. It could be anyone of any age group. If you've got money, you could possibly be taken. We've had complainants or victims as young as university age students. We've had victims as old as people in seniors' homes and everything in between. We've had everything on the spectrum as far as education levels. People with very low education to people with very high education. We've even had people like chartered accountants be taken by various investment frauds. So it can be anyone, and that's why we're always preaching so much for people to be diligent with their investment money. Okay, so here's an example we have that was one that happened within the last few years here at our office. Two elderly Saskatchewan bachelors who farmed together for their entire lives were defrauded in excess of $1 million over a period of about 20 years. The con artist would visit bi-weekly or monthly, each time leaving with a check for amounts ranging from $1,000 to maybe $50,000 for various different investments. Checks were immediately cashed at the victim's bank. Victims believed they were initially being given special investment opportunities, and they felt very privileged that this gentleman was stopping by to see them. They never wanted to believe their money had been stolen, and they feared that if they quit providing additional money, the con artist would quit coming and they would never get their money back. And even when our office intervened and started trying to talk with them, they really didn't want to accept or listen at the start because they were really scared that if they said anything to this con artist, that he would up and disappear and then all of their money would be gone. And unfortunately, in this case, all of their money was gone. The con artist had taken and pilfered all of the money. And by the time that this had come about, all of the money had pretty much been spent at that time as well. The only good that came of this is the fact that he was actually charged by the police here as well in this particular case. I have one other good example here, and this one's more on the crypto side, which is on our side for securities law. Crypto fraud is probably the thing that is the biggest thing on the rise right now. And lots of people are trying to get involved in crypto, partly just due to the fact that they think that they're missing out, everyone else is getting rich doing it, so people are jumping in. And a lot of people that are trying to jump in on the crypto are doing it with very little information. And fraudsters are really taking advantage of it, which is really unfortunate. So here's an example I have just on a crypto fraud, and this is one that just happened here in the last few weeks, unfortunately. Investment fraud can have devastating effects. This is a real case example of a fraud victim. A 73-year-old widow was going through Facebook when she saw an advertisement with a video of Prime Minister Trudeau. The video had him explaining that cryptocurrencies were now legalized in Canada, and at the end of the ad, a comment box was there and was left to leave your name and a phone number if you had any interest in getting involved. She left her information and was immediately contacted by a fake unregistered trading platform promising to make her rich and this person would be her account manager. Our victim did not know that they were unregistered to deal in investments in Saskatchewan. The account manager walked her through converting her real Canadian money from her bank over to crypto. And then from there, it was sent over to the trading platform, or so she thought. Over the next several weeks, the account manager convinced her to keep investing because on the trading platform, they had it made it look like it was continually winning and winning. Well, I'll say winning. They were continually making gains on their investments. And with the promises that these investments would do even better, our fraudsters convinced our victim to invest significant sums of money. At the first point that our victim decided that they wanted to try and get some of their money back, all sorts of roadblocks were thrown up. First, they were told that they were going to need to pay taxes and fees on the money. And when they refused to do that, the website upped and disappeared. And any contact that the person had, our victim had with the company, has been lost. And our victim, unfortunately, is out thousands and thousands of dollars. And there's virtually no trace of the website or where any of the money had been sent. And this is very, very reminiscent of what's becoming very common on the crypto side. So I can't stress enough that if anyone's getting involved on the crypto side of investing, just always make sure that you're registered, the people you're dealing with are registered, and they can be checked at the website, aretheyregistered.ca. Thanks, Shawn.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit here about what to do if you feel that you've been the victim of fraud. So there are steps that you can take to report the fraud to the correct authorities. And one important thing to remember is that as a regulator, we have no authority over criminal matters, and fraud is a criminal offense. So first and foremost, you need to collect your thoughts. The most important thing is to stay calm. Take the time to gather all the information about the fraud, including any documents, receipts, any copies of emails or text messages, any chat messages. If it was on a social media platform, take some screenshots. And then you're going to want to contact your financial institution. You're going to want to contact that institution that transferred the money, especially if you moved money out of your account to somewhere else. And if you've been the victim of identity fraud, you're going to want to place flags on all your accounts and certainly change all of your passwords to prevent access by that fraudulent individual. Most importantly, you're going to want to contact the police. As I mentioned, these are criminal offenses and the police have jurisdiction over criminal matters. So you're going to want to report that incident to your local police, whether it's a municipal police force or the RCMP. And most importantly, you're going to want to get a file number for future reference. And this will be extremely important. If you find suspicious activity on your credit report, you're going to want to update your file with the police. And credit reporting agencies are going to want those police file numbers to confirm that there's been criminal activity. And in most cases, if you're red flagging your bank accounts, the bank is going to expect you to report to the police as well to show that you've done your due diligence. And you can always report the fraud to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, which they do have a public website and they do a lot of education and information sharing to the general public about any of the prominent frauds that might exist out there, not only in Saskatchewan, but across the country as well. And that brings us to the end of our presentation.
Thank Thank you very much, Brett and Shawn. That was excellent in information on how to better protect ourselves from financial abuse. I appreciated, you sharing your knowledge, and then also those spot the scam examples. I think those are excellent. How we can look for red flags, just to go through those. That was very helpful. So I appreciate that. At this point, we will stop the recording. I'll have Carly do that. And then we'll do our Q&A session. And just before that, so as I mentioned in the Q&A box, you can type in any questions. I will be doing a few slides with you just about the Alzheimer's Society while you're thinking of questions, or if you want to stretch. So I'm just going to share my screen and, like I said, have a quick stretch break if you like as I share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can see that now. And so there will be people entering questions, and I will have my colleagues checking through the questions as well, and some will respond to you by email, as well as we will also ask questions here at the end as well. So let me just tell you a little bit about the Alzheimer's Society as you're thinking of questions. So the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan is the province's leading dementia care and research charity. The vision of the Alzheimer's Society is to live in a world without Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And the mission is to empower people to live well with dementia through the delivery of programs, services, advocacy, awareness, and research. We are accredited by Imagine Canada Standards Program for Excellence in Nonprofit Accountability, Transparency, and Governance. The Standards Program is a Canada-wide set of shared standards for charities and nonprofits. Did you know that 3 out of $4 the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan receives comes from donations? Donations come in for events such as tonight's evening of education, as sponsorships, gifts left in wills, monthly donations, or as general donations to the Society. A couple of things to make sure to note: a person does not need a formal diagnosis to be connected with us. We support those affected by Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, and have resources and knowledge about many different types of dementia. Okay, I'm just going to see if my slide's going to move. There we go. What can clients expect from the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan? Individual information and support available for both people living with dementia and their care partners. Learning opportunities, including tonight's evenings of education. Those are standalone topics presented by content experts. And we also have learning series courses to help people with dementia, their families and friends, to live as well as possible with the disease. And the courses offered build upon each other, covering the continuum of the disease. We help to build connections, such as there's support group opportunities. You can exchange information with others living with and affected by dementia, access the most current information, learn and share practical tips for coping with change, decrease feelings of loneliness and isolation, express feelings and be reassured that these feelings are normal, and find a sense of hope. We have a Minds in Motion program. It's a 2-hour weekly program that combines physical activity and social activity for those with early stage dementia and a friend, family member, or care partner. And we offer Minds in Motion in Saskatoon, Regina, and then virtually, so anyone in the province can take that as well. Connection to other organizations. This includes providing information on available services provided by the SHA, other government agencies, and lists of private or community-based organizations that help support people's dementia journey. Our shift to also offering virtual and online programming has increased our ability to provide additional programs in our communities. You'll see on the screen our Dementia Helpline number and also our email address for the Dementia Helpline. We have trained programs and services staff that provide dementia information, support, and education through our province. Our provincial office is located in Regina, but we have additional resource centers in Saskatoon and various locations across rural Saskatchewan. In the 2023-2024 fiscal year, we served over 3,000 clients from 336 different Saskatchewan communities. And if you have any questions about dementia or need someone to talk to, call the province-wide toll-free Dementia Helpline number on the screen or email us. And that's available Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. So 8:30 in the morning to 4:30 p.m. And this is the final slide I'll show you. I just wanted you to see our website and make sure to take a look at our Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan website and connect with us. You can connect with us through different social media. On the website, you can scroll down to our programs and events webpage and see our upcoming event information. And that's it from me. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we will do some questions and answers now.